Welcome back, Tapeheads. I'm your host, Cinema Kane, and today we are looking at the Bad News Bears here on Shelf Life. As a reminder, Shelf Life is a segment where I examine a film that, on some level, has aged poorly. But I look at it for its both overall content as well as the areas in which it has aged poorly, to try and balance it out somewhat. Because here's the thing, folks. Even movies that have started to age poorly have redeemable aspects. I believe this, and I stand by my statement. In the case of the Bad News Bears, what you have is a plot about the worst Little League team in all of Southern California, who have a former minor league pitcher in the form of Morris Buttermaker, played chef's kiss beautifully by the great, late Walter Matthau. The movie is all about how this team just can't win for losing. For you 90s kids or later that maybe grew up on the Mighty Ducks or the Big Green, think that, but with way more swearing. This movie has a coach that doesn't really want to be there. He doesn't care. But somehow these kids make him start to care, even if it's just a little. Buttermaker is a beer-swilling drunk who is trying to teach these kids to play ball, and he can barely hold down a regular job. He's a pool cleaner in the film. Finally, he gets the brilliant idea that a few years ago he was dating someone whose daughter had a great arm. So he brings in Amanda. And Amanda, played by Tatum O'Neal, is their secret weapon. She can pitch a fastball like no one else in the league. But then they get another ringer in the form of tough kid dirt bike rider Kelly Leak, played by Jackie Earle Haley, who some of you may know from Watchmen or from that god-awful Nightmare on Elm Street remake. We'll talk about that another time. But for the purposes of this review, the thing to keep in mind is that The Bad News Bears is actually very much full of heart and is a character piece. This movie lives and dies on just how good the performances from these child actors are. And I think the reason these child actors in this movie are as good as they are is because they're so natural. This movie feels like childhood. Even to someone who grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, this movie felt like it could have taken place when I was growing up, even though it was taking place in the mid-70s. Now we get to the parts that haven't aged well. These kids drink, they smoke, they swear. Okay, well, that happened in a lot of movies in the 70s and 80s. True, also happened in real life in the 70s and 80s. I'm looking at you, Gen X. You know what I'm talking about. But I think the biggest problem with this movie that hasn't aged all that well are lines of dialogue that would get me thrown off of YouTube, because these kids don't just drink, swear, and smoke. No, they also use racial slurs to refer to each other at times. And I ain't just talking about little ones either. I'm talking about they drop the hard R sometimes, and that's just a no-go, and we all know that. In fact, if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can find blind reactions to some of the dialogue on YouTube, and man, it's worth looking up, trust me. All of this said, Shelf Life, as I said, takes the good and the bad. Now we talked about both the good and the bad. This movie is full of heart, but it's also got those things that have not aged well, that have made it less of what it could be. In 2005, they tried to do a remake, and it was a PG-13 remake directed by Richard Linklater from the writers of Bad Santa, I want to say. But it was PG-13. This movie was PG when it came out. Probably would have been PG-13 had the rating existed at the time. But one thing they steered away from was the racial slurs. For good reason. The remake is actually not a terrible remake. I enjoy it quite a bit, in fact. But the original is still the best, in my opinion, even for all its aged problems. I'm your host, Son of Kane, and here on Shelf Life today, I'm giving the Bad News Bears 4 out of 5 stars. I'm taking away an entire star because we all know we should have known better. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, don't forget to click like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time at the video store.